I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jessica for 5 years. At first, everything seemed perfect. We had a lovely relationship, shared the same interests, and built a life together that I thought was solid. But in the past few months, something changed. It wasn't huge at first, just little things. She became more distant, more secretive, and it felt like a fog was settling over our once clear connection. I noticed she started guarding her phone like it was a top-secret dossier. Jessica used to leave it around without a care, but now she'd take it everywhere. If I even glanced at it, she would snap, "What do you want?" in a way that made me feel like I was invading her personal space. Once I asked her about a strange name that popped up when she was texting. She flipped it away and said, "Just someone from work, don't worry about it." The way she said it felt off, but I wanted to trust her. After all, we had a good life, right? Then there was the laptop incident. One evening, I had to use her computer to finish some work. I had done this countless times before, so I wasn't worried. But when I sat down, the screen was locked. I asked Jessica for the password, and she shrugged and said she had forgotten it. It was weird because she was always meticulous with her passwords. Then, without thinking much of it, I tried typing in a name I'd seen in her texts, Brian. The laptop unlocked. I froze. I hadn't seen that name in weeks, but it rang a bell. My heart raced as I stared at the screen, the reality of the situation hitting me like a freight train. In that moment, I felt anger flare up inside me, but I also felt a sickening feeling in my stomach. I started digging deeper, searching for answers. I found messages, pictures, and details that shattered my heart into a million pieces. Jessica had been cheating on me. I felt betrayed, confused, and enraged. All those little changes I had brushed aside suddenly made sense. When she came home that night, I confronted her. "Why did you lie to me, Jess? Who is Brian?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. She tried to deny everything at first, throwing out excuses that sounded rehearsed. "I swear it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice an octave higher than usual. She claimed he was just a coworker and that I was overreacting. But I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I pressed her for details, and her excuses became more ridiculous, like trying to convince me that they were just close friends and that she needed someone to talk to. I struggled to keep my composure as I listened to her pathetic attempts at justifying her actions. The anger inside me boiled, but I felt something else too, sorrow for the relationship we once had. As she rambled on about how it was my fault for not being attentive enough, I felt my heart breaking further. How could she turn this around on me? I thought of all the times I had been there for her, supported her dreams, and loved her unconditionally, only to be thrown aside for some guy she met at work. I wanted to scream, but I chose to remain calm, or at least tried to. The reality of the situation was settling in like a heavy fog, and I felt completely lost. It was not just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization that the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was capable of lying to my face. I needed to figure out how to deal with this because I couldn't just walk away from the years we had shared. As the night dragged on, I contemplated my emotions. I was angry, sad, and felt defeated. How could I move forward from this? I had put so much into our marriage, and now it felt like it was all crumbling around me. I needed to make a decision, but I also needed to process what had just happened. It was a storm brewing inside me, one that would soon demand to be unleashed. After that confrontation, I spent the next few days in a daze, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. I went through the motions of life, but everything felt numb. I was replaying the moments of our marriage in my mind, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. It was like watching a video on repeat, and with each replay, I felt a deeper sense of betrayal. The laughter we shared, the plans we made, all felt tainted now. Jessica, on the other hand, was acting like nothing had changed. She returned to her usual routine as if the air wasn't thick with tension. She would come home from work, smile, and talk about her day, but I could barely focus on her words. My mind was too busy unraveling the threads of our relationship. I watched her, analyzing every movement, every word, trying to discern if there were still traces of guilt on her face. But she was good at playing the part. The first real blow came when I decided to take a closer look at her laptop. I had gained access once, and I was still reeling from the discoveries I made. That evening, after she had gone to bed, I sat in front of the glowing screen with my heart pounding in my chest. I rummaged through her emails, her files, looking for any shred of evidence that would further expose her lies. I found more messages between her and Brian, details about their secret encounters, and even some suggestive photos. Each click felt like a stab to the heart. At one point, I stumbled upon a message that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just think about our last time together." I felt a rush of heat in my face, a mix of anger and sadness. The cruel reality of their connection sunk in deeper. It wasn't just a fling. It was an affair built on intimacy and deceit. The world around me faded away, and all I could think about was how easily she had given herself over to someone else. What hurt even more was the realization that I had been oblivious to her actions for so long. I had dismissed my instincts, choosing to trust her at face value. In that moment, I felt like a fool. I had invested so much in this relationship, and now I was just a pawn in her game. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I needed a plan, not just for confronting her again, but for how to deal with the fallout. The following days were a blur. I considered my options, weighing the possibility of confronting her again. But this time, I wanted to be prepared. I didn't just want to approach her with anger. I wanted to catch her in her lies. I started mapping out a plan for revenge, not the kind that involved anything malicious, but something that would make her feel the weight of her betrayal. I knew I had to gather more evidence to back up my case when I finally confronted her again. I casually began asking her about her day, about Brian, and noting every detail. I wanted her to feel comfortable enough to slip up and reveal more about their affair. Then, one fateful night, Jessica made a crucial mistake. She mentioned a work event that she would have to attend on the weekend. I listened intently, asking her about it. "Oh, it's just a team-building thing," she said nonchalantly, but I saw the way her eyes flickered and I knew there was more to it. That night I decided to follow her. I wanted to know exactly what she was up to. I couldn't just sit back and let her continue this charade. I needed to see it for myself. As I lay in bed, I felt both terrified and exhilarated at the same time. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I had to take this step if I ever wanted to regain some sense of control in my life. That Saturday evening, as Jessica got ready, I pretended to be engrossed in a video game. She took longer than usual to get dressed, and I could feel the tension in the air. When she finally left, I waited a few minutes before following her. I drove carefully, heart racing, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in my head. As I drove through the streets, I could feel reality closing in around me. What if she was really just going to a work event? What if I was making a fool of myself? But deep down, I knew I wasn't just following a hunch. My instincts had been screaming at me for weeks. When I arrived at the venue, a trendy bar downtown, I parked a little way down the street and watched as she entered. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what I was about to witness. I had to know the truth. The minutes ticked by, and I felt like I was in some sort of twisted movie, waiting for the dramatic reveal. I watched people come and go, but my eyes were glued to the front door. Then, to my horror, I saw Brian walk in, followed closely by Jessica, her laughter ringing out like a cruel melody. I was frozen, my heart pounding against my rib cage. They were together, a couple against the world, oblivious to the pain they were causing. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks, and I suddenly felt a surge of rage wash over me. I had seen enough. I needed to confront her, but not just yet. I wanted her to enjoy this moment, to feel the high of her new relationship. I would wait for the right time, when I could strike with the evidence I had, to make her realize the depth of her betrayal and the pain she had caused. I would show Jessica that this was not just a game, and I would make her understand the impact of her actions. The storm within me was ready to break, and it would be monumental. After witnessing Jessica with Brian, I felt a pit of rage and sorrow settle in my stomach. I could hardly drive home. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white as I fought against the tears that threatened to spill. I replayed the scene in my mind over and over. The laughter, the way she leaned into him, the way her eyes sparkled as he whispered something in her ear, it was almost too much to bear. I had always imagined catching a cheating spouse would be a moment of clarity, but for me, it was more like being thrust into a nightmare. I drove home, mind racing. How could she betray me? Why would she risk our entire life together for a fling? The questions churned in my mind, each one more painful than the last. When I got home, I could hardly look at our possessions, the photographs on the walls, the furniture we had picked out together. Everything felt tainted by her dishonesty. I needed to process this, to gather my thoughts and formulate a plan. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time it had to be different. I wouldn't just throw accusations. I would come armed with evidence that would leave no room for denial. That night, I stayed up late, sifting through the emails and messages I had uncovered on her laptop. I printed out the damning evidence, their conversations, the pictures, and the details of their meetings. Each piece of paper felt like a dagger in my heart, but I knew I needed to have it all laid out in front of her so she couldn't spin any more lies. The next day, as the sun rose, I felt a mixture of dread and determination settle over me. I decided I would confront her after work. It felt like an eternity waiting for Jessica to come home. I paced the living room, my stomach in knots. How would she react? Would she continue to lie, or would she finally come clean? When the clock struck 6, I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. My heart raced, and I took a deep breath to steady myself. I positioned the evidence in front of me on the coffee table, ready for the confrontation. As she walked in, I forced a smile, trying to appear calm. "Hey, Jess," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." She looked at me, confusion flashing across her face. "About what? You're acting weird." I gestured to the couch and she sat down, her brow furrowing. "What's going on?" I took a moment, gathering my thoughts. "I know about Brian," I said, my voice low and steady. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I could see the panic flit across her face. I reached for the printed messages, holding them up like trophies. "I have proof, Jess. You can't deny it anymore." She looked between the papers and my face, and for a second I thought she might just come clean. But then she shifted into damage control mode. "Mark, this isn't what you think. We were just—" "No," I interrupted, my voice rising. "Don't even try to spin this. I saw you with him last night. I know everything." Her face fell and the mask of denial crumbled. "You were spying on me." She shot back, anger replacing the initial shock. "How dare you?" I felt a surge of frustration at her ability to turn this around on me. "I wasn't spying, Jessica. You've been lying to me this whole time." "You think I wanted to find out this way?" She crossed her arms, clearly defensive. "It's not like that, I swear. It's just a mistake. I didn't mean to fall for him." "Then why did you?" I asked, the desperation creeping into my voice. "Why did you choose him over me? We built a life together, Jess." Her eyes softened for a moment, but then she quickly hardened again. "You don't understand. Things have been different between us. I was lonely, okay? You've been so wrapped up in work, and I just needed someone to talk to." The excuse hit me like a slap. "So you thought the best solution was to have an affair? You could have talked to me, Jess. We could have worked on things." She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't finished. I laid out the printed emails and texts on the coffee table. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the incriminating evidence. "You can see it all right here. You're not just going to walk away from this, Jessica. You need to own up to your mistakes." She stared at the papers, her face paling as she took in the gravity of the situation. I didn't think you'd find out," she stammered, her bravado faltering. "Of course you didn't, because you thought you could get away with it," I said, my voice steady yet filled with hurt. "What's it going to take for you to understand how deeply this has affected me? How can you even apologize for something like this?" Tears pooled in her eyes, and I felt a pang of something. Was it empathy? No, it was the realization that this was no longer the woman I had fallen in love with. This was a stranger who had betrayed my trust. I could see the fear in her expression, but part of me was angry that she still didn't seem to fully grasp the damage she had caused. As the confrontation continued, I felt a mix of sadness and resolve. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the foundation of our relationship crumbling beneath us. I wanted to believe that we could salvage things, but it was becoming increasingly clear that rebuilding would require a level of honesty and commitment that she seemed unwilling to offer. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions in my chest. I need time to think, Jessica. I can't just forgive and forget. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know if I can ever view you the same way again. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing softly, but I could feel the distance between us growing, thickening the air like an unbreakable barrier. I stood up, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew I had reached a critical juncture. The path ahead was murky, but I needed to figure out what I wanted, not just for her, but for me. Would I choose to fight for our marriage, or would I walk away from the person I thought I knew? The storm inside me was far from over, and it was beginning to feel like my life was about to change forever. The days following that confrontation felt like I was moving through a fog. Jessica and I were living in the same house, but it felt more like we were two strangers sharing a space. The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Jessica tried to talk to me, to apologize, but every time she opened her mouth, I could only hear the lies that had poured out of her before. The betrayal was a wound that had been cut deep, and it felt fresh every time I looked at her. I found myself replaying our past conversations, moments of intimacy, and shared laughter. How could the woman I loved so deeply turn around and betray me in the most fundamental way? Part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake, that it was a phase, but the other part screamed for me to be realistic. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. As the days turned into a week, I started taking stock of what I wanted. I was in a place of emotional turmoil, and I needed to figure out my next steps. I sought advice from friends who had been through similar situations. Their perspectives helped me gain clarity. Some suggested that I try to work it out, to attend couples therapy, while others firmly believed that I should cut ties and walk away. One evening, I decided to take a long walk to clear my mind. I found myself wandering through the park where we used to stroll hand in hand, reminiscing about our sweet moments together. I felt anger bubbling beneath the surface as I walked past the benches and trees that held memories of happier times. It was as if those moments were mocking me, reminding me of what I had lost. During my walk, I stumbled upon a small cafe that was one of our favorites. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided to step inside. As I sat at a table, nursing a cup of coffee, I picked up my phone and started scrolling through the messages and emails I had printed out. Each word felt like a stab, and I had to remind myself that this was the reality of my situation. Suddenly, I received a text from Jessica. I nearly tossed my phone aside in irritation, but curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "Can we talk? I really want to make this right." My heart raced at the thought. Did she genuinely want to fix things, or was she just trying to assuage her guilt? I sat in the cafe for a while, contemplating how to respond. I could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on me. Finally, I replied with a simple "fine." When we set a time for later that evening. As I walked home, the tension in my chest tightened. I had no idea what she would say or if it would even matter at this point. I arrived home early to prepare myself mentally for what was to come. When Jessica walked in, there was an air of desperation about her. I could see the hope in her eyes, but I was still grappling with the pain she had caused. She led me to the living room and we sat facing each other, the silence stretching out like a chasm between us. "Mark, I'm so sorry for everything," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you in a way that I can't even begin to express. I was stupid and I let my feelings get the better of me, but I want to fix this. I love you and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." I listened, but inside I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "Do you really think saying sorry is enough, Jess? You broke my trust. You shattered everything we built together." "I know," she replied, tears pooling in her eyes, "but I'm willing to go to therapy, to do anything to make this right. I know I can't erase what happened, but I want to try." Her words hung in the air, tempting me to consider the possibility of rebuilding. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part reminded me of the pain, the betrayal, and how easily she had turned her back on me. "What if I agree to that?" I said, my voice low. What if we go to therapy and we work on things? How do I know you won't just slip back into that same pattern again? I promise I'll do better. I'll show you that I can change, she insisted, desperation lacing her voice. I never meant to hurt you. It was a moment of weakness and I regret it every day. I searched her face for sincerity, but all I found was a mix of fear and yearning. You say this now, but words are just words, Jess. Actions matter. If you really want to fix this, you need to prove it too. Me? For a moment, silence enveloped us. Her shoulders slumped and I could see the weight of reality pressing down on her. I will, she finally whispered, determination shining through her tears. I'll do whatever it takes, just give me a chance. The air felt heavy with the gravity of our discussion and I fought against the conflicting emotions swirling within me. Could I really give her another chance? Or would it just lead to more heartache? Before I could respond, she reached out and took my hand. Please, Mark, I love you. I know I've messed up, but I want to make this work. I want us back. I felt a flicker of hope amidst the pain, but I also felt a wall of caution rising within me. My heart wanted to believe her, but my mind was screaming for me to be careful. I had to tread lightly. I'll think about it, I finally said, pulling my hand away. But you need to understand that this will take time. It won't be easy, and I'm not sure if I can forgive you right away. I understand, she replied quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, but I'll do everything I can to show you that I'm committed to fixing this. As I sat there, staring into her teary eyes, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I knew that this conversation was just the beginning of a long and complicated journey. The path ahead was uncertain, and I had no idea if we could truly find our way back to each other. But for now, I was willing to explore the possibility, even if it was just a flicker of hope in a storm of pain. The days turned into weeks, and the process of navigating our fractured relationship began. Jessica and I agreed to attend couples therapy, and while I was apprehensive, I knew that it was a necessary step if we were to have any hope of rebuilding what we had lost. The sessions were uncomfortable at first, filled with awkward silences and heavy emotions. I had my walls up, and Jessica was trying to break through them, but it felt like we were speaking two different languages. The therapist, a calm and composed woman named Dr. Harris, encouraged us to share our feelings openly. I watched Jessica as she spoke, her eyes filled with remorse, and though it pained me to see her vulnerable, a part of me wanted to believe that she was genuinely trying to change. She would often turn to me during our sessions, pleading with her eyes for forgiveness and understanding, and it was a battle within myself to keep my heart guarded. I found myself opening up more than I expected. I talked about the hurt, the betrayal, and the deep sense of loss I felt. It was cathartic to put my feelings into words, but every time I shared, I could see Jessica's heart break a little more. The guilt weighed heavily on her, and I couldn't help but wonder if she was truly remorseful or if she was just playing the part. One evening after a session, we decided to go out for dinner to celebrate our small victories. I wanted to believe we were making progress, and as we sat across from each other, I felt a flicker of hope. The restaurant was cozy, filled with soft lighting and laughter from other tables. We talked about mundane things, our favorite shows, and the places we dreamed of visiting one day. For a moment, it felt like we were reconnecting, like we were just a couple again, with no shadows of infidelity looming over us. But as the week continued, old wounds resurfaced. Jessica would sometimes mention Brian casually, as if he were just another coworker, and I would feel my stomach drop. "I talked to Brian today about the project," she'd say, her tone light and carefree. It took everything in me not to react, but I would clench my jaw and smile through my discomfort. I could see her trying to be normal, but each mention felt like salt in the wound. One night, after a particularly tense conversation about her work, I snapped. "Why do you keep bringing him up, Jessica? Can't you see how much it hurts me?" She looked shocked, her eyes wide. "I wasn't trying to hurt you, it's just work. I thought we were past this." "Past it?" "I don't think I'll ever be past it," I said, frustration bubbling over. "You can't just pretend everything is normal when it's not." The argument escalated, and we both shouted things we didn't mean. Jessica accused me of holding her past against her, and I shot back that she had given me no choice. The fight ended with her storming off to the bedroom, and I felt the weight of despair settle heavily in the pit of my stomach. The next day, I decided to take a break from therapy. I needed time to process my feelings on my own without the blur of our sessions. I had been trying so hard to focus on us, on mending our relationship, that I had neglected my own emotional well-being. I took long walks, spent time with friends, and began jotting down my thoughts in a journal. As I wrote, I reflected on what I truly wanted. I thought about the love I once felt for Jessica, the memories that still brought me joy, and the moments of laughter we shared. But I also thought about the betrayal and how it had stolen a part of me. Was it possible to get back to that place, or was I simply fooling myself? Then one evening, as I sat on the couch with my journal, I received a text from Jessica. "Can we talk, please?" My heart raced, unsure of what lay ahead. After everything, I still cared for her, but the emotional scars were fresh. I agreed, and we set a time for later that night. When she arrived, there was a solemnity in her expression that told me this conversation was different. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, both hesitant to bridge the gap. "Mark, I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her voice shaky. "I know I've caused you so much pain, and I want to do whatever it takes to fix this. But I also realize that I've been selfish." I didn't respond, just watched her as she continued to speak. "I've been so focused on trying to fix our relationship that I haven't taken the time to understand how I made you feel. I've been avoiding the consequences of my actions." The honesty in her words hit me hard. I could see the weight of her guilt pressing down on her, and for the first time I felt a sense of empathy. "It's not easy for me to trust you again, Jess," I admitted, my voice low. "I'm still hurt, and I don't know if I can fully forgive you." "I know," she said, tears welling in her eyes, "but I want to earn that trust back. I'm willing to do the work. I've asked Dr. Harris for individual sessions to help me understand my motivations and why I did what I did. I want to make sure I never hurt you again." Her commitment to self-improvement stirred something within me. Maybe this was the first step toward healing for both of us. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. "I appreciate that, Jess. But I need to see consistent actions, not just words. You can't just tell me you're going to change, you have to show me." "I will," she promised, sincerity shining in her eyes. "I'll do anything to prove to you that I want to rebuild our marriage. I'm not expecting you to forgive me overnight, but I hope you can see that I'm trying." As I sat there, I felt a flicker of hope. It was fragile, but it was there, and for the first time in weeks, I could envision a path forward. The road would be long and filled with challenges. But if Jessica was willing to put in the effort, maybe there was a chance for us after all. I decided to give us another shot, but with the understanding that it would take both of us to actively work on our marriage. We had a lot to overcome, but that glimmer of hope reminded me that love could sometimes be worth fighting for, especially when it was still so deeply rooted in my heart. It was a new beginning for us, one that would require patience, understanding, and a commitment to rebuilding what had been lost. The storm within me was beginning to settle, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could find our way back to a place of love and trust once more. As weeks turned into months, Jessica and I began to navigate the rocky terrain of rebuilding our marriage. It was not an easy journey. There were days when I felt anger bubbling up inside me at the mere thought of her betrayal, and other days when I glimpsed the woman I loved, the one I wanted to believe could change. But I was learning that healing takes time and patience. Our therapy sessions continued, and I found myself opening up more than I ever thought possible. We discussed our hopes and fears, our dreams for the future, and the lessons we had learned from the past. Jessica was dedicated, attending her individual therapy sessions and working hard to address the issues that led her down the path of infidelity. It was a difficult process, but I could see her trying to change, and that gave me a glimmer of hope. At home, we established new routines. We started setting aside time for date nights, where we would disconnect from the world, put our phones away, and focus solely on each other. We would laugh, share stories, and reconnect over simple things like dinner or walks in the park. Rebuilding that intimacy felt crucial. Every small moment was a step forward, but there were also setbacks. Jessica would occasionally slip up, referring to her work and mentioning Brian. The first few times I felt a surge of anger and hurt, but I learned to voice my feelings instead of bottling them up. When you mention him, it brings back all the pain. I told her one night after she brought him up again. I need you to understand that it still hurts. It feels like you're not fully committed to moving on. She listened, and I could see the remorse etched across her features. I'm so sorry, Mark. I truly don't want to hurt you. I'll be more mindful. It was these conversations that reminded me that we were working through this together. We were facing the issues as a team, and that made a difference. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I looked at her and smiled. Remember when we used to binge-watch that show together, the one with the quirky detectives? Jessica chuckled softly. Oh God, yes, I loved those moments. We'd get so into it, we'd stay up late just to finish a season. Let's do that again, I suggested. Let's find a new show and make it our thing again. Her eyes sparkled with joy, and we spent the rest of the night cuddled up, laughing and getting lost in a new series. It felt good to share those moments again, and for the first time in a long while, I realized I was genuinely enjoying her company. As time went on, I noticed the heavy weight of betrayal slowly lifting. We still had work to do, but Jessica was proving herself every day. She was making an effort to show me that she was committed to rebuilding our relationship. I could see her taking responsibility for her actions and trying to create a future where we could both feel secure. However, a turning point came when we were invited to a friend's wedding. The thought of being in a room filled with couples made me anxious. I wasn't sure if I could handle the emotional weight, but Jessica held my hand and encouraged me to go. We're in this together, she said, determination in her voice. I'll be by your side the whole time. At the wedding, as we danced together under the twinkling lights, I felt a sense of peace settle within me. Sure, there were moments where the shadow of her betrayal loomed, but I also felt the warmth of our connection reigniting. I couldn't erase the past, but I was beginning to find a way to build a future. Months passed, and I realized I had started to trust Jessica again, albeit cautiously. I could see her making a genuine effort to change, and I began to feel a shift in my heart. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to her and said, "You know, I'm starting to believe that we can make this work." Her eyes filled with tears of relief and hope. "I've been waiting to hear you say that, Mark. I love you, and I'm grateful for every chance you're giving us." "I love you too, Jess," I replied. "But it'll take time. I want to rebuild, but I also want to make sure we're doing it right." "I'm in this for the long haul," she said, a smile breaking through her tears. "I promise I won't take your trust for granted again." As we embraced, I felt a renewed sense of hope. It was a fragile but beautiful thing. We still had challenges ahead, but I was no longer just haunted by the betrayal. I was learning to embrace the possibility of healing. Through this entire ordeal, I learned a lot about love, trust, and vulnerability. I realized that relationships are perfect, and sometimes they require hard work to survive. For anyone going through something similar, I would advise you to communicate openly, seek help, and most importantly, give yourself the time and space to heal. Life is unpredictable, and while my marriage had faced a storm, I was beginning to see the faintest rays of sunshine breaking through the clouds. It was a new chapter for us, one filled with challenges and chances, a chance to rediscover love in a way that was deeper and more profound than before. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next.